Raptor fans keep asking me one thing: why is Bruce Brown still around? No, but actually though, Raptor fans keep asking about who are these 5 new rookies that they picked up at the 2024 NBA draft. And so I did a little bit of digging, watched 8 hours of film, no big deal, and here are my thoughts on the 5 newest Raptors. First up, the Raptors used the 19th pick from the Pascal Siakam trade to draft Jacoby Walter. The strength of Jacoby Walter's game is scoring. I mean, what else would it be? His parents named him after Jordan and Kobe. So the 19-year-old freshman led Baylor in scoring. He hit a lot of threes. Jacoby is definitely a shooter. And something you would commonly see in Baylor's offense would be him coming around a screen and catching and shooting with any chances that he got. Now, he was super aggressive, which did hurt him in the sense that his field goal percentage was a little bit lower, only 38%. However, the plus side is it got him to the foul line quite a bit. He took over 5 attempts per game because of how aggressive he was on offense. The bigger thing Jacoby needs to improve on is his strength. I mean, he's wiry, he's stubborn, and he definitely competes, but he just lacks a little bit of strength right now, which is not uncommon for a 19-year-old. You sometimes see him struggle to turn the corner on offense, and sometimes I feel like he doesn't really hold his position defensively either, which again, just comes back to him needing to get stronger. Now, of course, you could look at other things as well, like, he could probably improve his technique or probably improve his efficiency. He can certainly pick his spots better on offense, but ultimately, I think if he gets a little bit stronger, just like how Grady Dick did as a rookie, it'll be the biggest thing that turns his rookie season around. A successful season for Jacoby would just be to crack the rotation, likely as a bench guard by season's end. Most likely he'll spend some time with the 905, which is a very normal route that almost all Raptors rookies go through. And you got to keep in mind that he's a 19-year-old who spent his entire life in Texas. He's got to adjust to being a pro for the first time, living in a different country for the first time. It's going to be very similar to what Grady Dick went through last season. But by all accounts, Jacoby is an awesome kid. He's a hard worker. He's really humble. And the Raptors can afford to be patient with his development. Next up is Jonathan Mogbo. Toronto used the 31st pick that they acquired from the OG Anunoby trade to draft a 22-year-old, 6'8", 230-pound forward out of San Francisco. The deal with Mogbo is that you can't put him in a box. He's got a really unique skill set. He is a small ball center, but he also runs a bunch of offense for his team. He's very comfortable switching on defense, so you'll see him sliding his feet against small guards. You'll also see him being big in the post against centers. He fills up the stat sheet across the board. That was one of the biggest selling points with him. Over 10 rebounds per game, 3.6 assists, 2.4 stocks, and he led the NCAA in dunks this past season. The simple comparison there is Draymond Green. Now, of course, Draymond, a lot to live up to, a 4-time champion, and also he has a basketball podcast that ranks below Hello and Welcome, #1 in Canada. Like and subscribe. But also at the same time, you can see how Draymond defined this archetype of like a small ball center, does a lot of playmaking, a little bit of occasional scoring. I would even argue that Mogbo, because of the way he can drive and finish with both his left and his right hand, is a little bit more dynamic, especially because he's a little bit more springy. But ultimately, there's a lot to like with Mobo's game there. But here's the thing with being unique. It's also more difficult. The decision here for the Raptors is whether they develop him as a wing or as a big. And I would argue they should keep exploring his skill set as a big. I know he's has the body of a wing, 6'8", 7'2" wingspan, kind of like an OG Anunoby, but I would argue that his skill set lends more to him being a big. You see him being able to run the offense, pick out a backdoor cutter, going to the basket. That stuff doesn't really play when he's a wing. I would say that obviously there's a challenge defensively because he's undersized, but at the same time, he's a prolific rebounder. He's got the physicality, he's got the nose for it. And I think as a center, if you can rip it off the glass and push the break, all of a sudden you have a much bigger impact. The other thing with him developing as a wing is he doesn't really shoot. In 2 seasons, he hasn't taken a single three, and he barely takes mid-range shots either. So even though he's wing-shaped and he's wing-sized, I would love to see the Raptors continue to try to develop him as a small ball big. Mogbo likely starts off the year playing in Mississauga, but I actually think that there is a path to minutes for him that isn't normal for a 31st pick. I mean, first off, he's physically ready to play. Like, there isn't like a catch-up that he needs to do. He doesn't need to get much stronger or anything like that. Athletically, he's ready to go. And I think the other thing too is you look at the Raptors roster. The depth chart besides his bestie, Scotty Barnes, there's not a lot of big, springy, active forwards on the roster. And so I think Mogbo ends up being the backup to Scotty by season's end. Next up, the Raptors selected Jamal Shead with the 45th pick, which they acquired in the Jalen McDaniels fleecing. He is a 6-foot point guard out of Houston. The thing you need to know about Jamal Shead is that he is an absolute dog on defense. I mean, he was named Naismith Defender of the Year as the best defender in college basketball, and he also was the tip of the spear for the best defense in the country in Houston, which held opponents to 57 points per game. With Jamal, numbers don't even tell you the whole picture. Like, I could tell you that, he averaged 2.2 steals per game, but what that doesn't show you is just his absolute intensity that he brings on every single possession when it comes to defense. And it's not even just the technique, it's not even just the strategy, it's the fact that he lives in your jersey. He shrinks the space, he bodies up on you at every single opportunity. And yes, obviously Houston played this style of defense where they blitz a lot of pick and rolls, but that was possible because of all the effort that Jamal put into this. And what do I mean by effort? I mean plays like this where Jamal is sprinting back full speed, pokes the ball free, and he realized the other team got the ball back, so I'll just steal it again. Or how about this one where Jamal is going into a dive from the middle of the floor on the logo, and he ends up sliding all the way to the sideline so that he can win a jump ball against 4 players on the other team. Like, these are the type of plays that lead teammates and coaches to rave about Jamal's character, because this is what setting the tone and leadership looks like. Unfortunately, Jamal does have a couple of weaknesses, namely his three-point shooting and also his size. Across 4 seasons at Houston, he shot under 30% from deep, and you can argue that these were difficult looks, top of the floor, these are deep threes, some of them self-generated. But it's fair to wonder if he can generate enough offense as a guard. The other thing is his size. I mean, we love a short king here in Toronto. You look at Kyle Lowry, you look at Fred VanVleet, you look at Muggsy Bogues, even look at like a Marcus Stroman. But ultimately, besides point guards, who else can Jamal Shead guard? Because he is literally fighting an uphill battle. I expect Jamal to be pushing for minutes either as the backup point guard or at the very least as the third string point guard this season. Yes, he'll probably spend some time with the 905, but ultimately, I would love to see him by season's end fighting with a Davion Mitchell, for example, as backup point guard behind Emmanuel Quickley. Similar to how Fred VanVleet did in his rookie season. And hey, if you can get the 45th pick anywhere near the rotation by season's end, that'd be a huge win for both the Raptors and for Jamal Shead. Next, the Raptors spent $1 million to acquire the 57th pick, and they drafted Ulrich Chomche. He is the youngest player in the draft. He doesn't turn 19 until December 30th. He is a 6'11" center from Cameroon, and last season he played at the Basketball Africa League and also at the NBA Academy Africa. Nobody can tell you for certain what Ulrich Chomche will become, simply because Chomche is just too raw, too inexperienced, and quite frankly a little bit too young right now to fully project what his future is going to be. You can look at the great physical tools. He's 7 foot, he's nimble, he can challenge shots above the rim, he can sometimes even knock down a 3 even though he has his fair share of air balls and clank layups. But realistically, you can't compare him to most other prospects simply because he doesn't have the built-in level of training or experience or just fluency with basketball that you would typically see. I mean, he's playing off of instinct rather than instruction at this point. So you can look at it and be very optimistic and say, well, this could be a guy who can block shots, who can also potentially hit a 3, and he's 7 feet tall, who can move his feet. Or you can say that he's Bruno 2.0 and that he's kind of 2 years away from being 2 years away. What Chomche really needs is patience and development. The Bruno 2.0 comparisons aren't really fair, nor are they really flattering, but they can be very instructive. What Bruno needed was a ton of time and patience to not only grow and learn the game, but also to mature both physically and mentally. Luckily for Chomche, the 905 is already in place, unlike it was with Bruno in his rookie year. And also, Chomche is much more physically ready to play pro basketball as compared to Bruno at a similar age. But hopefully, if everything really goes right, Chomche can be 1 year away from being 1 year away. After the draft was over, the Raptors also added undrafted center Branden Carlson. He is a 25-year-old center from the University of Utah. So the deal with Branden is pretty simple. He's a 7-footer who shoots threes. He hit over 38% from deep at over 5 attempts per game in his final season. And as you can see here, these are not easy looks. These are contested looks. These are pick and pop looks from the top of the floor. And it showcases that he's got a pretty great touch. You can clearly see how that could be valuable as a 7-footer, especially as somebody who also has a bit of a post-up game as well. Now, I'd argue that Branden is more of a power forward than a center for what it's worth. He isn't a strong rebounder. He doesn't handle physicality all that well because he's a little bit skinnier. But there's ways around that. Utah played 2 bigs to compensate for this, and maybe the Raptors can do the same. And I gotta say, he is more mobile. He's not really as stiff, and he averaged 1.7 blocks over his career. So there's something to work with here. As with most two-way players, Branden is going to have to soak up some time in the G League. If he can show that the three-point shot is real and that he isn't just getting destroyed defensively, then he's got a chance. I know it's a little weird to see a 25-year-old rookie who isn't like Jorge Garbajosa coming from overseas or something, but who cares? If he contributes at any level for the Raptors, it's already a win. So which Raptors rookie are you most excited to watch? Let us know in the comments below.